The first time she said those impossible words, the entire room fell silent. The sunlight pouring through the tall office windows suddenly felt cold, the laughter from nearby co-workers disappeared into the background, and every heartbeat seemed louder than the last. She stood there with trembling hands, exhausted eyes, and a voice that carried the weight of someone who had already run out of hope. She looked at the quiet single father standing near the doorway and whispered that she needed a husband by tomorrow. No one expected what happened next. No one imagined that one simple answer would begin a journey capable of healing two broken hearts, giving a lonely child a family, and reminding everyone that miracles sometimes arrive disguised as ordinary people. Before we continue this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone who still believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to A Journey of Hearts for more unforgettable stories that remind us hope is never truly lost. Morning sunlight covered the streets of Brookhaven with a warm golden glow as people hurried toward work, cafes filled with conversations, and children laughed while walking to school. Among the crowd was Rowan Mercer, a 36-year-old carpenter whose rough hands revealed years of honest labor while his gentle eyes revealed years of silent sacrifice. Every morning followed the same rhythm. Before sunrise he prepared breakfast, packed lunch, braided his little daughter's hair as neatly as he could, kissed her forehead, and walked her to school before heading to the construction company where he repaired office buildings across the city. His daughter, 6-year-old Marin, had become his entire world after losing her mother during childbirth. Rowan had spent years learning how to be both father and mother. He learned to bake birthday cakes that leaned sideways, to sew tiny costumes for school plays, to comfort nightmares with bedtime stories, and to hide his own tears until after she had fallen asleep. Most people admired him, but very few understood how lonely his evenings truly were. Across town, 29-year-old Celine Ashcroft seemed to have everything life could offer. She directed one of the city's largest non-profit housing organizations, wore elegant clothes, drove an expensive car, and inspired everyone with her confidence. Yet behind every polished smile was exhaustion. Her late grandfather had built the charity that housed hundreds of struggling families, but his final will contained one condition that no one expected. Control of the organization would pass to Celine only if she were married before her 30th birthday, which was the following day. Otherwise, control would be handed to distant relatives who had already announced plans to sell the charity's properties to luxury developers. She had spent months searching for a solution, not because she dreamed of marriage, but because hundreds of vulnerable families depended on the organization surviving. Every lawyer had confirmed there was no legal way around the will. Time had simply run out. That morning she visited one of the buildings scheduled for renovation, hoping to inspect the work before meeting the board. Rowan happened to be repairing damaged wooden stairs in the entrance hall. While everyone else admired Celine's success, Rowan barely noticed her expensive clothes. He noticed only that she looked tired enough to collapse. During the inspection, a loose railing suddenly gave way beneath an elderly resident. Without thinking, Rowan lunged forward, catching the woman before she tumbled down the staircase. Celine rushed over to help, shaken by how close tragedy had come. Watching Rowan calmly comfort the frightened resident while checking for injuries, she saw something she hadn't found in months of meetings with wealthy investors and ambitious executives. She saw genuine kindness. Later that afternoon, after learning more about Rowan from the building manager, she made the most desperate decision of her life. She found him organizing tools in the workshop as sunlight streamed through dusty windows. Her voice barely rose above a whisper when she confessed everything: the impossible condition in her grandfather's will, the hundreds of families depending on her, the deadline ending at noon the next day. Then she quietly admitted she needed a husband by tomorrow. Rowan stared at her, not because he thought the request was ridiculous, but because he recognized the look in her eyes. It was the same hopeless expression he had seen in the mirror after burying the woman he loved. Instead of laughing or walking away, Rowan asked only one question. He wanted to know whether saving the charity truly mattered more than saving her reputation. Celine nodded with tears filling her eyes. His reply changed everything. He said that marriage should never be built on lies, but helping people should never be abandoned because of pride. If this truly saved innocent families, he was willing to help under one condition. They would treat each other with honesty, protect his daughter from unnecessary pain, and walk away peacefully once the legal complications were resolved if that proved best for everyone. Celine couldn't speak. Relief washed over her so suddenly that she nearly collapsed. For the first time in months, someone had offered help without asking what he would gain in return. The following morning was bright, warm, and surprisingly beautiful. Birds sang outside the courthouse as though unaware that dozens of lives were about to change forever. There were no elaborate decorations, no orchestra, and almost no guests. Rowan arrived holding little Marin's hand while Celine stood beside her elderly housekeeper, the woman who had practically raised her. The ceremony lasted only minutes. Yet something unexpected happened when Rowan gently slipped the simple wedding ring onto Celine's finger. Neither of them felt romance. What they felt was trust. Afterward they celebrated with sandwiches from a nearby bakery while Marin happily chased pigeons across the courthouse square. She innocently asked whether Celine liked bedtime stories because her father always used funny voices when reading. Celine smiled for what felt like the first genuine time in years. The board meeting that afternoon changed immediately after the marriage certificate was presented. The organization remained under Celine's leadership, and plans to sell the housing complexes were permanently cancelled. Hundreds of families celebrated without ever knowing how close they had come to losing their homes. Life, however, refused to remain simple. To avoid public suspicion during ongoing legal reviews, Rowan and Marin temporarily moved into Celine's large but lonely home. At first everything felt awkward. Rowan preferred fixing broken shelves instead of hiring workers. Celine was used to quiet evenings filled only with paperwork. Marin accidentally filled the mansion with laughter, crayons, and tiny shoes left in impossible places. Slowly, the empty house began feeling alive. Rowan repaired the neglected garden fence and planted vegetables with Marin. Celine started joining them after work, discovering she enjoyed digging in the soil more than attending expensive charity dinners. Weekend breakfasts replaced formal dining etiquette. Laughter replaced silence. One rainy afternoon Marin caught a terrible fever. Rowan stayed awake through the night beside her bed, refusing to leave even for a moment. Celine quietly brought fresh towels, prepared soup from an old family recipe, and sat beside them until sunrise. Watching Rowan gently cool his daughter's forehead with a damp cloth, she finally understood what real love looked like. It wasn't dramatic speeches. It was choosing someone every ordinary day, especially the difficult ones. Months passed. Rumors spread throughout the city that Celine had become softer, happier, and somehow stronger. Rowan continued working instead of relying on her wealth, insisting that dignity came from earning one's own living. Employees admired him because he treated janitors with the same respect he showed executives. Then another challenge arrived. Celine's distant relatives filed a lawsuit claiming the marriage had been arranged solely to satisfy the will. If proven, the charity would once again be placed at risk. Lawyers prepared endless documents. Reporters surrounded the courthouse. Strangers questioned Rowan's motives, accusing him of marrying for money despite the fact that he had signed legal papers refusing any claim to Celine's fortune. The pressure became unbearable. One evening Rowan quietly packed his belongings. He believed leaving would protect both Celine and the charity. As he loaded boxes into his truck, Marin hugged Celine tightly and asked through tears why families always had to say goodbye. That innocent question shattered every wall Celine had built around her heart. She finally admitted the truth to herself. Somewhere between shared breakfasts, rainy nights, bedtime stories, scraped knees, school concerts, and ordinary mornings, this temporary family had become the family she never knew she needed. She ran outside before Rowan could drive away. Without rehearsed speeches or dramatic promises, she simply told him that the marriage had begun as an agreement but had become the happiest part of her life. She confessed that every room felt brighter because of him, every meal tasted better because Marin laughed at the table, and every future she imagined now included both of them. Rowan stood silently for several moments before smiling with tears in his own eyes. He admitted he had tried every day not to fall in love because he feared losing another family. Yet love had quietly found him anyway. They embraced beneath the evening sky while little Marin clapped with excitement, believing grown-ups finally understood something children always seemed to know. The lawsuit eventually reached its conclusion. Former employees, residents, volunteers, neighbors, and even school teachers testified that Rowan and Celine had built a genuine family. The judge ruled that although the marriage began under unusual circumstances, the relationship had become authentic beyond any reasonable doubt. The charity remained protected forever. Years later, the housing organization expanded into neighboring counties, helping thousands more families find safe homes. Rowan opened a vocational workshop teaching young adults carpentry skills free of charge, while Celine continued leading the nonprofit with compassion rather than ambition. Every evening they still gathered around the same kitchen table. Marin, now older and wiser, often laughed whenever people asked how her parents met. She always smiled and said that sometimes the strangest beginnings create the strongest families. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to A Journey of Hearts so together we can continue spreading stories filled with compassion, courage, and second chances. Special request * before this story ends, please comment with the words, "Kindness always finds a way" red heart, so we can see how many people still believe love begins with compassion. As the sun set over Brookhaven one peaceful summer evening, Rowan stood in the garden he had once repaired as a visitor. Celine joined him, and together they watched Marin laugh while chasing butterflies among blooming flowers. Neither of them could have imagined that one desperate sentence spoken on an ordinary morning would rewrite all their futures. Sometimes destiny does not arrive with fireworks or grand celebrations. Sometimes it arrives quietly, wearing work boots, carrying a lunchbox, holding a little girl's hand, and answering impossible questions with extraordinary kindness. And perhaps that is the greatest reminder life can offer, that the strongest families are not always the ones we plan for, but the ones we choose every single day with patience, sacrifice, forgiveness, and love.